Late last year, I gave you a hardware preview of Honor's Magic VS. It's a fantastic new foldable that is now coming out globally. I've been using it now for just over a week with the final software, so I can give you now the full ins and outs of this foldable, which has a inner 7.9-inch OLED. The outer with a standard aspect ratio is 6.45 inches. A usable aspect ratio, so 21:9 aspect ratio, not a narrow screen like the competitors out there. Also OLED, 120 Hz. It's all powered by a 5000 mAh battery. Along with our phone in the box, you will find this, our 66 watt Honor supercharger. So it's got a Type A connection there to it. The cable included is of a decent length to it, so it's a standard Type C to Type A cable. We have a SIM tray tool, and they also do include this, which is a case for the back of it. Now the case here does have the Honor branding on it, and of course it fits the Magic VS perfectly. It's got this synthetic style leather to it, which is your vegan leather, and on the back there is this adhesive strip you remove, so it is going to be held into place and will not end up coming off. Just demonstrate very quickly what the case is like. So it clips on, you remove that adhesive, and there it is, offering you some protection on the back of it, and because of the raised lip there, the camera module is also protected. Good protection for the top of it, and then for the bottom, but you'll see that the other half, the front outer screen, we don't have a case for that, or at least not included with this. So it has an impeccable finish, and the build quality is just absolutely top notch with this. So we've got here our spine on the back of it. There's no branding. Now this is metal, and it does have a matte finish to it, so it doesn't pick up any smudges, and hopefully a little bit more resistant to those finer scratches that you can sometimes see on polished metal. Now it has their super lightweight gearless hinge, and because of this design, they've managed to really keep that weight down, which is very light for a foldable such as this, because it's only 267 grams, which is really good. Now, the feel of the hinge is excellent, very good when I open that up right there, and it just locks into place and it will not rattle around if I was to shake it like that. Now the hinge, the crease here, you do see a little bit of it. Now especially if I hold it up and get the lights to reflect on it, you can see it, it's noticeable, but running my finger over it, not bad at all. And of course it closes flat, there is no gap, so dust is going to get in. And it's a question that pops up a lot about, say, if a grain of salt or sand or whatever got in there, would it be an issue? Would it be a problem? Well, there's this raised lip around the outside here, and it's not really going to be an issue. So the screens, they're not actually touching when they fold too. So it pulls that screen back a little bit, it goes in there. When you close it, you get this really satisfying, nice little noise here. And there's a magnet that holds that into place. So we have this always on capacitive fingerprint reader here on the side, metal frame all around the outside, volume up and down button. Again, build quality very good. And down the bottom here, we've got our SIM tray, which takes 2 nano SIMs. No micro SD card support. You know, those days are long gone, sadly. I do miss my micro SD card support. Loudspeaker right here, antenna lines, microphone, Type-C port is USB 3.1, so it supports high-speed transfers, and yes, video out, so that's all good. Another microphone, IR transmitter, and the other loudspeaker there too. So the position of it is good, that if you have it open, you're holding it and using it like this, then you're not going to be blocking those loudspeakers because they are there and there, which is excellent. So really nice, super premium build quality to this. And the back of it, however, bit of a mirror, as you can see. This reflective surface picks up smudges. I've intentionally not cleaned it so you can see what it looks like after using it for a few days. So you will be constantly cleaning this one all of the time. Now on camera here, we've got a triple camera set up, and it's not bad at all for a foldable. So the main camera, this is an IMX 800. It's a f1.9 aperture, the lens that it uses, 54 megapixels. We have a 3x optical zoom camera, which is f2.4. That one's 8 megapixels, and a 50 megapixel ultra wide, but they gave it autofocus, so it is also our macro camera, which is great. And I'll give you some samples from the cameras, video performance, and all of that later on in this review. Then up here, we've got a 16 megapixel camera on the outer screen, and the inner one as well is 16 megapixels. Now for video support, these cameras, they only support 1080p, so there's no 4K with them. However, you can just flip it around. When you launch the camera there, you can turn on the cover screen preview. All right, so you can see right now, there's my camera set up above me, my overhead rig, and you use those main cameras there. So you can then shoot in 4K, 4K 60, and even 4K 60 cinematic log footage too that you can later on color grade yourself. So the fingerprint reader, how good is it? So side capacitive always on, you just need to touch it and then it unlocks. Now I'll repeat that, do that one more time for you. So 1, 2, 3, you see it's okay. It isn't the fastest, but what is making it look a little slower is the animation, the way that just things load in there. Now you can of course do it when it is closed or open. So I just touch that now, then it unlocks. So it works really well, and you would have noticed just then that it just works every single time. For me, it seems to be a 10 out of 10 fingerprint reader. Every time I use it, it does work at least. Now, I think one of the best things about this foldable is the outer screen. It's a normal standard aspect ratio. So if you're a Z Fold 2, 3, and 4 user, you'll be used to that very narrow outer screen, which I don't actually like at all. I've got videos on my channel about those particular foldables, and they're really good foldables, but the outer screen just isn't that usable. But here it is, because it's a standard aspect ratio. So this is 21:9 aspect ratio. It's a 6.45-inch screen. It is an OLED, and it does support 120 Hertz. So both of the screens, the outer and then the inner screen, have that 120 Hertz. And not only that, they do have a pulse width modulation of 1920 Hertz. And that means that it's basically like DC dimming, which I'm thinking of, because I don't see any banding, I don't see any flicker or any problems with these screens. They are solid and they look absolutely fantastic, especially this inner screen. With all foldables that I've covered in my channel that I've used, because they don't have the glass over the top of them, the contrast of these screens, you have to see it in person, really just is so vibrant. The colors are really punchy and everything just looks absolutely great. But of course, it is a little more fragile. But back to that outer screen, really good how it is a standard aspect ratio, super usable to type on. And you see when you've got your keyboard, it's not all crushed in like it is with the Z Fold series, which is one of the big annoyances with that particular one, which of course this Honor Magic VS has completely overcome, being a standard size. So 6.45 inches, and then we have here our 7.9-inch screen, and very fluid, really good, both of them being 120 Hertz. Now, Honor does give us quite a few options here in the settings for our display. Now, I've turned the scaling down a little bit because you're able to just adjust that how you like it. I found that it was a little big, so you just go into the display size. You've got your options here. So small is what I've got it set to, then you can increase it right up to really large if you wanted to. But having just a 7.9-inch screen, I felt that it was just sized and looked a little bit better, to me at least, being on the smaller size. So that's why I've done that. So if you don't like how small the fonts are, then you can go and tweak that. These are all kind of pretty standard settings here for Android 13 that it is running, and it is Magic OS 7.1 that is their custom skin over the top, which is very smooth and fluent. Just a couple more things on that screen too, by the way, that we've got smart resolution. Now this is an option that you can either turn on or off, and then we've got our refresh rate control. Now what I like about Honor is they're one of very few now companies that does offer this. You can set 90 Hertz if you wanted to. Now 90 Hertz isn't one that I've actually been testing for the battery life because I've been running it at 120, but it's that perfect blend of battery saving, but yet you still retain some of that fluidity, and it doesn't feel as slow as 60, even though I think 60 is still fine for a lot of people. If you need to save battery, of course, by all means, you would probably be using that. Now the smart resolution, I've just kept that on and I haven't really noticed any problems with that. So it will chop and change the resolution, but it's not a noticeable change at all. I'm not really seeing it. So that is pretty good there. And at normal viewing angles, distances, I haven't noticed it just being a little bit more pixelated or not as sharp as what I would like. So in terms of screen brightness, it's good. We've got 800 nits on the inner panel here, which for this kind of use right now, and even in direct sunlight, you can still make it out. And the outer screen, which is probably what you'll be using when you're out and about, well, that can peak then at 1200 nits. So really good screens here. They do have DCI-P3 wide color gamut, so a lot of colors in there, and I love the 120 Hertz and how smooth and fluid everything is. Magic OS 7.1, just to talk a little bit about it briefly, very good performance. Multitasking, as I'll show you shortly, really good, very fast, and I've had no problems. Even though, yes, it's running now a last gen chipset, the Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1, it's no slouch. In terms of performance, it's adequate, more than adequate, and I don't see any lags. Really well optimized UI. So for the layout here of your applications, this is using a launcher that is your widgets and your apps there all in one, is the same as the outer and inner screen. They're both identical there, which some people may or may not like. There's no two separate layouts for outer than inner. So when I open it up, I know I've got all my apps in the same exact place. So I do like this. I think it's handy. Now, when it comes to multitasking, it is very good. So I'll just launch here Chrome. Now I've got Chrome in full screen, but I'm able to do this. I can go to where all my apps are and I can tap and just make that windowed. And then you've got the little quick launcher here on the right-hand side, so I can tap this, bring up other apps that I've already got in Windows, for example, have them here. Now I can easily go full screen with those apps again if I wanted to, so it really is a multitasker's dream. And what if I decided that, well, no, I want to run Chrome here, in full screen, then I just tap here and put it into full screen. Or then I decide, no, hang on, I really need to split screen it now, so you can do that. So you've got the split screen. So I can have Chrome on this side. I can go along, launch my Gmail too, have that running, or my emails, and it's very comfortable to do so. And performance is really quite good. You don't really notice any slowdowns or difference running the apps like this. And even to swap around the orientation of the screen, not a problem, really quick. So it is a great UI. It's great for multitasking. And I'm just scraping the surface here really of what you can do with the multitasking. The only thing that's missing, which I think a lot of people probably might want to with this kind of a device, is stylus support. Unfortunately, this global model doesn't have it, but there is another version in China that does support a stylus, but we're not getting it. So if you are someone that does like to read ebooks and PDF files, it's a very good screen for this. This is where you're going to take advantage again of that screen real estate, the size of it, apart from that top area there, which I hope a firmware update will be fixing. Now, there's a couple of things I wanted to run through. So bloatware, very good from Honor here. There is basically no bloatware. You get, yes, of course, some of their apps, like their own app market, instead of just Google Play Store, Honor Health, My Honor. That's it. That's really good compared to some other brands that, I'm not joking here, they put about 20, 25 additional applications that are mostly just garbage that you have to go through uninstalling. Doesn't happen here. So all models have the 12 gigabytes of storage and the 512 gigabytes of storage and 12 gigabytes of RAM, and you get around 462 or so free on first boot. Remember, you can't expand upon that. Antutu scores here, they show us that it's a little bit lower than I expected for the Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1, but it's not bad. Now, it doesn't slow the phone down. It still feels very quick. The performance is amazing, really. I don't see any lags, any stutters, any animation issues. It's really well optimized. Storage, because it's UFS 3.1, it's not as fast as UFS 4.0. You need the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 for that, or a new Dimensity 9200, but still good speeds. This is not going to slow down the phone at all. Don't worry, it's not a bottleneck, and everything is really quick. So if you like Gcam ports and open camera, you've got access to all the cameras via this, which is Camera 2 API support, the maximum, level 3. So well done, Honor, for giving us that option there. And this is what I was talking about before. So Netflix in full HD, but missing out on HDR support, unfortunately, even though this is an HDR 10 plus screen. Both of the screens are. Now, how about throttling? If you push it really hard gaming, this is the only time you are going to see this. And I understand that it does throttle a bit, down to 30% almost exactly. Makes kind of sense to me because it is a foldable here. They're trying to keep down the weight. They've got definitely some constraints with the cooling that they can put in this. So it's an okay result here. And more on that later with gaming when I get into it. So we have a 5,000 milliamp hour battery. Just ignore this, okay? That's because it's not reading it correctly, the app. But what I'm trying to gauge here is the charge time, which is excellent. So 39 minutes to fully charge from 14 to 100% battery. That's very good for 66 watt charging. Not bad at all result. And then battery life, finally, this is with the screen set to 120 hertz, it managed to get 7 hours and 30 minutes. Now, realistically, with my use that I've been doing, you're looking about scraping around 6 hours of on-screen time. It's not amazing. This is one of the downsides of foldables because of the larger screen. It makes sense. It's got a lot more pixels. It's a lot more for the battery consumption to handle all of this screen real estate here. The bigger screen, 7.9 inches, so it burns through it a little bit. Now, if you run 90 hertz, then you will be able to get around 7 hours of on-screen time and maybe even slightly over that. So battery life for a foldable is quite good. Now, Netflix, you're probably wondering, will it work on it? How does it work? Well, you can't get the app from Play Store, but just simply download the Netflix APK file and it works. Now, I've been using this for a while and it's working in full HD and that's all good. The only thing it doesn't seem to want to support is HDR with it, but I hope that's going to change. But the main thing is we've got full HD support. That's good. Amazon Prime Video is the same. We do have full HD support with that too. It does have a Widevine level 1 cert. Here's something that seems to be a must for anyone with a foldable device, even though for me it's not really a must. I don't find myself using this, but flex mode, it is there. So this is one of my own videos that I'm playing, and you can see with it open, I can either set it here if I wanted to. The screen will sit in its position. It won't keep opening or keep closing. It won't fall back or anything like that. And now I can just type here, and I could type a comment while still watching my own video there, which is good. And if I go and open it up a little more, you'll see it's then going to change. It goes back into the normal mode. So there is a sort of flex mode here, and you're able to do this if you wanted to, if that's how you like to type and use it almost like one of those old style flip phones, then it's there. So those Samsung guys out there, you should be happy with this model, apart from the missing stylus support, of course. Now I'm going to jump into Genshin Impact just to show you a little bit of gaming performance, but I just wanted to point this out too. So for all of the scaling things, you've got the setting under foldable phone. In settings, you can set 16:9, 4:3, or for Genshin Impact, I'm going to go with full screen. And this app is one of the few that does actually run properly. You can see there's no border on the side here. There's the camera cutout. And it looks really good. So I've got it on the maximum settings, and I do have it set to 60 frames per second on those top settings. And this performance is very good. So the frame rate is, in the beginning, really quite good. After a while, you will see some throttling that starts to take place. And that is exactly like what I saw with 3D Mark, that it will just end up throttling down a little bit. And eventually the frame rate will go from, in the beginning, around about 55 frames per second to in the mid 40s, lower 40s is where you'll end up if you do run the highest possible settings and then 60 frames per second, which I am right now. But it's so immersive and just looks fantastic gaming, especially with a game like this on the screen. Just look how vibrant and punchy those colors are. It's more immersive, much more enjoyable, I find, gaming on a larger screen like this, even at this square aspect ratio. And for audio, of course, there's no 3.5mm headphone jack, but do yourself a favor, get yourself one of those, and then problem solved. Now, the quality of the audio sounds good. The loudspeakers, they're very good as well, and I'm just, because I don't have it with me anymore, I ended up selling it. They're very similar to what I remember from the Z Fold 4, okay? And here is a sample now of them at 100% volume. But just before I give you that sample, voice call quality is good, no issues there. Just thought I'd mention it. Moving over to our cameras now with the Magic VS. This is the outer camera here, which can only shoot 1080p. Unfortunately, we do not have any 4K with this outer cover screen camera, but it's not too bad, the 1080p quality. Now, if you need 4K, as I'll show you shortly, you can just flip it around and use the outer screen as your viewfinder, your preview screen. So this is what it looks like if you use those rear cameras and you flip the phone around and use the cover screen as your viewfinder. So this is with the ultra wide camera. That's how I've got so much in this shot right here. So 4K 30, I'm recording that again. Now there is a time limit, which is 15 minutes when you shoot in 4K. So this is with that 50 megapixel ultra wide camera. Very hazy conditions at the moment. That's probably why the sun looks like that. There's actually some dust, kalima that they call it here. that's in suspension in the air, stuck from Africa. Now on the fly, I can swap over here to the main camera, and you can see there is a noticeable difference, and especially to my eyes at least, what I've been looking at on my monitor is a lot sharper. So I'm just going to jog ahead, testing the stabilization here. So it's electronic, and I can even swap over then to the 3x camera. This is 3.5, and just take a look here at the castle in the background. You can see a person up there on the top, and go to 10x zoom, which is, yeah, for video not looking good at all. It's shaking around a little bit. Now this does have optical image stabilization. I go back to that 3.5x. That looks a lot better. And just walking ahead a little, the footage isn't too bad, but it is hard if you move and walk to keep yourself locked onto the subject, which is the castle there. So go back to the main camera, and then over to our ultra wide here, sorry, and just to pan around. So what is the final verdict then? This is a fantastic foldable phone. If you're after something that's similar to, say, a Samsung Galaxy Z Fold and you don't care about stylus support or an IP rating, and you want that more usable, larger outer screen, fantastic inner screen, and something that's got a pulse width modulation of 1920, so you don't see any flicker on these screens either. They are stunning displays, and as I said, just very usable, that outer screen. It really does make it. So the quality of the cameras, as I showed you from those samples, is good, but I feel at times, because there's no optical image stabilization with the main camera, some shots have a tendency to be blurred a little bit when you're especially in lower light situations, like indoors or something. That photo I showed you of my cat was actually a tiny little bit blurred, and if we had optical image stabilization with the IMX 800, probably wouldn't have happened or as bad as we saw. The other is that there's no stylus support with this model, but if you did get, or they did bring out, should I say, the Chinese version, there's one other one that does actually have stylus support, would have been great, but we don't get it sadly with this model. And the other, which is nitpicking really, because the same kind of problem affects other foldables, is with some applications, the aspect ratio or that top border, depending on the orientation of it, where the inner screen camera is, that cutout, that you can get the border on the top, which is a slight annoyance. So the UI performance, super fluid, super fast. There's no lags at all, even though, yes, it is running a Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1, which is now, of course, last gen. We've got the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2. You really don't notice it. The performance is still very good. And okay, yes, it does throttle a little bit. And gaming on the device, you see that really only if you game a lot. The performance does dip down after it starts to heat up a little bit there. So that is Honor's VS here, the Magic VS, a fantastic foldable phone. Thank you so much for watching this review.